Students, and welcome to this live session of IELTS Learning. My name is Adrian, and I am broadcasting to you from beautiful Central Europe. I hope everybody is having a great Thursday or has had a great Thursday. Welcome, students. Hi, Surya. Hi, Pachu. Hi, Mac. Hi, Chirag. Hi, everyone joining in. This class is focusing on the reading section. We will be looking at a section 3 or a part 3 of the reading, so the more challenging passage in the academic exam. Now, this is a bit of a more difficult passage than you will see in the general module, but hey, if you can do a good job with this reading, you can definitely do an excellent job in the general module reading passages. This passage is taken from one of our 6 original practice exams. You can find those for the academic. Check us out at aehelp.com. That's academicenglishhelp.com. And for the general version of the test, check us out at gieltshelp.com. On both of those websites, we have lots and lots of materials, strategies, videos, interactive courses for you to get those high band scores. Spend a couple dollars, save yourself lots of stress and headache, not having to sit the exam multiple times. Maximize your scores. All right, students. So those websites, they look like this. This is our academic here with the blue background. Click that red button, and if you're looking for general, this is the website you're looking for here with the green background. Click that. All right. So, if you have questions about our products or about the exam, don't be shy. Send me an email. My email is Adrian, A-D-R-I-A-N, at aehelp.com. I've been working with IELTS for the past 10 years. I have experience with examiners, with test creators, with creating tests, and my education is in psychology, understanding how people learn and think and how exams are created. So use my knowledge. Send me an email if you have a question. Today, this reading class. Tomorrow, we will have another members chat class, a speaking part 2 that was requested by one of our members, then listening. And on Saturday, we will have task 1 and speaking part 3. Now let's get right into today's reading passage. Here we go. Good to see you in this class, Hong, as well. All right. So, this is reading passage 3. On our websites, you will also find audio for the reading to help you with your reading fluency. Today, we will focus purely on the passage, looking at the title. Always read the title of the passage. Don't rush. Don't jump around. Don't just try to search, scan, or skim for answers. These are not effective techniques, especially not effective in the academic, and definitely not going to help you with passage 3 too much at all. So if you want to get the high score, band 7, 7.5, 6.5, you have to read. You have to read. You need to read the passage. You need to stay calm. It's the story of the tortoise and the hare. You have to be the tortoise. You have to pace yourself. You have to think logically, focus, and go step by step. So you have to be the tortoise, not the rabbit, okay? If you're jumping around, it will just create problem after problem. All right, so here, let's read the title, Causes of the American Economic Crisis. When you read this title, what comes to mind? Lan, that's fantastic, a band 8 in your reading. Good job. So what comes to mind for this title, Causes of the American Economic Crisis? What do you think of? You should think about what that is, when it was, what happened. Of course, if you don't have much information, it's a little bit tricky, but you should collect as much information from your own experience or your own mind as you possibly can. Now, this is, of course, dealing with the 2008 crash that happened. Shilpa says, what's a financial crisis? Yeah, what kind? It's not in the 30s, so this is not the Great Depression for Dobbs. This is more recent in 2008. So what is the American economic crisis? What does that even mean? Okay, what are we talking about here? So Chirag Patel says it's something to do with financial liquidity. Yes, absolutely. Charlie Sen says lack of jobs. People start losing jobs. Yep, that's part of it. I think that's a good thought, Charlie. Hung says the reason for why the economic crisis happened. What is that, Hung? Why did that happen? Okay. Macpreet says it's some kind of economic failure. Yeah, who's responsible, Macpreet? Who did it? Okay, why did that happen? Who can we point our finger at? Okay. Vivek says it's reasons for the monetary problems in the U.S. Sure. What are those reasons? Okay, Amina Saeed says, I think it's something to do with mortgage crisis. Amina, can you write for your fellow students in the chat what mortgage is? Esra Karauz says the same. It's something to do with mortgage. So what is that? Okay, Silin Wang, good vocabulary. Businesses are bankrupt. Macpreet agrees. Bankruptcy. That means you basically cannot pay your loans anymore, okay? And you have to declare bankruptcy. Unable to pay loans. Okay, or debt. Sure. Yeah, mortgage, what is that? Mortgage is a special type of loan. It's a house loan or real estate loan. Absolutely. Those are some good vocabulary. Chirag says, yeah, going into bankruptcy means you're defaulting on your loans. Default on the loan means that you can't pay for it. Absolutely. All right. Good. So some good ideas there. All right. Who's responsible for defaulting on loans or not being able to pay mortgages? Who, why does that happen? Okay. Kamal says it has to do maybe with some international competition with some other rapidly developing countries like China, especially when the country has 1 billion people, Kamal. Absolutely. Yeah. King Never Dies says something maybe with low government. Macpreet says the government is partly responsible. Amrit Bogan says maybe the people are responsible. Good. So those are some great ideas, students, and that's what you should be thinking about when you read this title, Causes of the American Economic Crisis. So all of those ideas should be in your head before you begin to read. It will make your reading easier and you will understand it better and faster. And of course, your marks will go up. You will answer questions with more confidence. So what do I do next? I read the title. What do I do next? What's my next step? Okay. So some more great comments, Hong. That's a good comment as well. Preeti, very good comment as well. So Amrit says, okay, let's jump to the questions. So let's have a look at the questions before we read. Sure, yeah. Amrit, you have the right idea. Let's look at the questions. We won't necessarily read them, but we'll take a look at them to see what's expected after we read the passage. Of course, this is happening quickly in the official exam, so you're only doing this for 1 or 2 minutes, the title and the questions. So here we have a yes, no, not given. Do the following statements agree with the claims of the writer in reading passage 3? So it's kind of like a true, false, not given. Okay, very, very similar. Do I read this question? Should I review this question before I look at the passage? King Never Dies says, King Never Dies, I'm going to give you an acronym. I'm going to shorten you up to KND. Says, no, you should not. Amina says, nope. Yeah, so all of those who say no are right. Don't read a question that is confusing, that contains extra ideas or false information. It's not going to help you when you read the passage, okay? In fact, it will actually be a negative. Simply because the brain is not linear. Okay. All right. Then the next set of questions. So we just skipped the yes, no, not given. The next set of questions say complete each sentence with the correct ending A to F. Should I read this question? Should I read the complete the sentences with the correct ending type of question? Okay. Pachu says, yeah, read it. Lipsa says, not all of it. KND says, yes. Hong says, no. I think it's because some of you are thinking a little bit differently. And Pachu said it a little bit clearer, stated it clearer. So just read the first part. So only read what you will see in the passage. So 31, banks have a responsibility to. Okay, good. 32, each bank is responsible for. 33, a recession is started when. Yeah, so all of this information or the answers will be somewhere in the text. Now, the choices, A to F, there's 6 of them, so only 3 will be correct. We don't know which 3, so we don't read these because there are 3 false or not given responses that can be confusing for us. So we're just going to skip those, okay? Now, here's our third set of questions. This is a complete the summary using a list of words. Should I read this? Should I read this type of complete the summary? Preeti says yes, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, so this one's really good to read, especially because it's a summary. So it's summarizing the passage. A passage summary question is really helpful to read. So you should actually read this by paying a bit of extra attention. It will help you understand the passage. All of this information is somewhere in the passage, and it gives you basically a conclusion, like an overview of that passage. So it's really good to read, okay? So the American government's role. Read with me. Again, students, this is a reading class, so don't just watch and listen, but read, okay? And if you can, read aloud. So listen to yourself, hear yourself, okay? All right, read with me. Is the American government, which is arguably most responsible for the economic crisis, it is the American government. In order to something properly, people must be sheltered from possible problems created by something. Regulation is required in any society in order to coerce people into acting for the benefit of something. Government is in place to serve its citizens, and in this case, it has failed. Apologists will say that the recession is just a something on the radar of American supremacy, while others say that such bumps on the road are something of serious problems. Regulation is the solution to the problem, but the American something of independence and small government will be very difficult to crack. Okay, and I don't worry about the choices. So, again, students, read information and questions that is in the passage. This is a very important strategy. Okay. It will really help you. So read information in questions that you will see in the passage, and do not read extra and false information in questions, as this is confusing and unnecessary and a waste of time. Okay? So keep that in mind when you're studying for the reading section. So next step, of course, let's go back and read. Okay? So our next step is reading. Now this is a passage 3, so it is challenging. We will go through it together, and we will help each other to understand it clearly and learn vocabulary and answer questions successfully. So here we go. Let's start from the top. This is the introductory paragraph. Remember that. Read with me. Students, read with me, nice and loud. When discussing the causes of the late 2000s American subprime mortgage crisis, it is easy to lay all the blame on the banks, but it is incorrect to claim innocent the individual home buyers involved as well as the American government as a whole. There are many instances in the years leading up to the crisis where moral obligations failed to be met. For the home buyers, it is a case of ignoring a scenario which was, upon deeper inspection, too good to be true. For the bankers, it was falling prey to their own laissez-faire loaning policies, lending without giving much interest to the mandates required of the borrower. For the government, it was instituting such a laissez-faire system in the first place, free of regulatory checks and balances. Fantastic. Ask yourself, what is this paragraph about? What are we talking about here? So what is this paragraph about? What is the introduction about? The introduction is very important to understand because it outlines the essay. It gives you the idea of what the essay will include. Okay? So you must focus to understand the introductory paragraph, as this will help you understand the whole passage. And remember what you read. Okay? So, again, correct writing, thesis, outline will help you with this. And if you watched our last class, you know what I'm talking about. So what is this paragraph about in this case? Give me a nice answer, students. What did we just read? Okay. So Amrit says it's the crisis in the USA, the responsibility and the cause of it. So Amrit, responsibility and cause, kind of the same idea. So yeah, what's caused it? Who's responsible? Macpreet says, who's responsible for the US economic failure? For Dobbs says that too. And Preeti takes one more step, correctly Preeti, and says the government, the banks, and the individuals. What's the order? What's the correct order, Preeti? So what did the paragraph outline as the correct order? It's very important, Preeti. Which one was first, individual, bank, or government? And other students, help Preeti on this one. You should do the same. So who was the first, who was the second, who was the third that was mentioned in the thesis? In the thesis. Was it banks first? Okay, sorry, I should have been clear there. It should be the thesis. Okay, the thesis. Okay, well, let's not panic. Let's go back. But logically, it would make sense to say individual, bank, and government, right? Go from small to big. If I'm writing this essay, I would go from individual to the bank to the government. That would make sense. Always focus on the thesis, students. That will outline the essay. So, let's see. Here we go. So this is about where the thesis starts here. Once you really get good at reading, especially academic texts, you'll figure out where the thesis begins, and that will really help you. So check it out. For the home buyers, it was a case of ignoring a scenario which was, upon deeper inspection, too good to be true. That's the individual, the people buying the houses. For the bankers, it was falling prey to their own laissez-faire loaning policies, lending without giving too much or much interest to the mandates. The banks that were at fault, right? So 1, 2, and then it says, for the government, it was instituting such a laissez-faire. Laissez-faire system means a relaxed system, an easy system, in the first place, free of regulatory checks. So that's number 3. Okay? So it goes people, bank, government. That's right. Now, if I'm an active reader, which I should be, especially if I want a band 6.5 or 7, then I realize what? What does this tell me? So if I see that it says people, bank, government, what does that tell me? What important information does that reveal to me as the reader? Yeah, so Amrit says, well, basically it tells me that the first, second, third paragraphs will be in this order. Yeah, Amrit, very good. So it's telling me the order of the essay, the structure of the essay. Definitely. So what is the introduction about? It is about the people, the banks, and the government being responsible for the economic crisis. And this tells me that first, the essay should talk about, if it's well written, and IELTS essays are well written, the first part will talk about people being responsible. The second one will talk about banks being responsible. And the third part will talk about the government being responsible. Why is that important for me to know? So to get a high score, to get a good grade, to get a lot of the questions correct, why is that very important for me to know? What does that help me with during the exam? Okay, so what will that actually assist with? Yeah, Amrit, that's right, for scanning. So if I actually have to search for answers later in the essay, then I know where to look. If the question is about people, I know to look near the beginning. If the question is about banks, I know that it's somewhere probably near the middle. If it's about the government, it's somewhere near the end. So it will help me to locate answers, and it will also help me to visualize LIPSA. That's right. So it gives me clear structure. Okay, so let's keep reading. Let's keep going here, students. All right. Again, read with me, nice and loud, students. If a person falls prey to an email scam, the blame is deservedly placed on the hapless person. Society feels pity for them, but nobody feels the government should reimburse the individual for their lack of caution. The person in this scenario has affected no one but themselves. If a person falls prey to a too good to be true subprime mortgage and ends up bankrupt, he or she is not just hurting themselves, they are also hurting society because that debt inevitably rests with the populace. Thus, while a person has no social responsibility to act a certain way in the case of an email scam, a person does have a social obligation when it comes to actions that can hurt society, such as taking on a subprime mortgage. The counter-argument here is that people perceive banks as possessing a certain level of trustworthiness, and that it is unreasonable to expect people to have their too good to be true radar active when dealing with banks. Nevertheless, people do have an ethical obligation to be aware of pitfalls, and being told it's okay by trustworthy institutions is simply not a sufficient excuse. What is this paragraph about? So what are we talking about here in this paragraph? Well, if we paid attention in the introduction to the thesis, we realize that this paragraph is talking about buyers. Yeah, about the individuals. Absolutely. Good. Yeah, so here this paragraph talks about individuals and how people should be responsible when they borrow money. They should not borrow money carelessly from banks. They can't just point fingers at the bank. So they should only borrow money that they can pay back. Okay, so they have to be careful with borrowing money. Good. All right. So you see why it's so important to understand the introduction and the thesis so that we can understand the next paragraphs. Okay, you see why it's important to think about the title and think about words like bankrupt, because you see those in the paragraph. Okay, they're connected. So you're doing a great job so far. All right. Okay, so then we keep going. Let's move to the next paragraph. I bet you can guess what this one will be about. Here we go. Read with me. Banks have a responsibility to protect their customers and to look out for the general economic health of not just their company, but of the entire industry. The American banks failed in these considerations in each of these regards. First, they offered mortgages to millions of ill-qualified buyers who were clearly not going to be able to fulfill the requirements of the mortgages to make the loans viable. Individual lenders acted selfishly, exploiting a very relaxed lending policies to benefit their own finances. Second, banks failed to look after the health of their own companies. This is not a failure of the individual bankers, but a failure of those in management positions. Many U.S. companies that needed a multi-billion-dollar bailout are an unmitigated disaster. Although this failure falls more in line with the email scam, this is to say a failure which is not a social failure, but a business failure. The social failure lies in the bank's obligation to the entire industry and the economy as a whole. Each bank is responsible for a small piece of the economic pie. If one bank fails, it appears as a blip on the radar. However, with each individual failure, the threshold for failure for the remaining companies is lowered. It is in this sense that companies have a moral obligation to do good business, because if they do not, they raise the chances of bankruptcy for each of their competitors and the economy as a whole. Eventually, the threshold of failure is so low that almost all lending has to cease and a recession is ignited. Okay, so of course now we know this paragraph is about the banks and the bank responsibility. Why? Why did the banks fail? What did the banks do that created an economic crisis? What was it? So we know it's about the banks. MacPreet, you're right. We're smart, so we paid attention to the thesis. We know this paragraph talks about the responsibility of the banks. Amrit says, well, because they were careless. All right, Amrit, but how? How were they careless? Lipsa, same thing. So what do you mean? What kind of carelessness? Chirag Patel says, well, they made some kind of bad loans. Yeah, Silin Wang says they lent money to unqualified people. So they lent money to people who could not pay the bank back. Right. Okay. And that created a domino effect, right? So one bank fails, no big deal. The next one fails, problem. Third one, uh-oh. Fourth one, disaster. Fifth one, catastrophe, right? It's a domino effect. And they collapse the economy, right? So again, visualize that, right? One bank lending money to people that can't pay back, causing a problem. Next one's doing the same, bigger problem. All of these problems add together to create a crisis. Good. Good job, students. I love how so many of you are getting it. Here we go. So let's keep going. Again, read with me, nice and loud. In this investigation of blame placing, arguably the body who holds the most responsibility is the American government. The truth is that if people are not protected from themselves by the government, society cannot function well. The wholly free market is akin to an economic version of Hobbes's state of nature, people acting like tigers and bears trying to get at each other's money. Society does not work optimally when it pays overwhelming dividends for people to act selfishly. It takes regulation in economic policy to force people into acting in society's best interest. One of the duties of a government is to protect its citizens from each other. And in this case, the American government has failed catastrophically. Defenders of the free market will claim that this recession is simply a temporary bump in the road for what is arguably the greatest economic power in world history. They will claim that the free market is in the best interest of everyone, despite its rather unsightly undercarriage. In response, it can be argued that the bumps in the road are symptomatic of a system in need of healing by means of regulation. Unfortunately, American culture is such that any regulation is seen as government interference in private affairs. And such intervention conflicts with American ideals. Economics is not the only arena where this belief system is played out. Americans continue to allow their poorest citizens to live without proper health care, and they put the burden of the cost of higher education directly on students. Many European countries fully subsidize higher education. Until this distaste for government intervention is cast aside, events like the subprime mortgage crisis will continue to occur. Whether they are merely bumps on the economic road or signs of forthcoming systemic collapse, in both cases, the government has failed to fulfill their role to save the citizens from themselves. In regard to subprime mortgages, regulation of banking is like an insurance policy for the economy. It may lower profits. Insurance policies cost money, but it smooths out the bumps in the road. As long as the American government continues to turn a blind eye to these insurance policies, they will continue to put the social well-being of its citizens at risk. Okay. So, what is this paragraph about? It's about the government being responsible. Why? Why is the government responsible for the economic crisis? That's the question. Now, I get it, students. You're thinking, that's a long paragraph, and it's got so many tough words, and it's so... Don't think negatively. Think positively. Think about what you can understand and focus on that. You don't have to understand this whole paragraph to get a good band score. You just have to get the main idea. Okay? So Russell says it's something to do with intervention. What do you mean, Russell? Okay? So Shilpa says it's the government's irresponsibility. Right, Shilpa, but how are they irresponsible? Tina says, well, they're not protecting their citizens. How are they not protecting their citizens? What are they doing that creates this danger for the society? Okay, so the question that we're trying to answer here is, why is the American government partly or mostly, according to the writer, responsible for the 2008 economic crisis? Okay, why is that? So why don't they protect? So Amina says it's because the easy regulations. Yeah, so easy regulations, relaxed rules and regulations. Yeah, so that's that laissez-faire, that French word that we use in English as well, the easygoing or relaxed system. So relaxed rules and regulations around business, money exchange, lending does not protect society, but encourages selfish behavior. Sure. So why is that? Why do you think that happens in the US? Okay. So Ilham, yeah, it's government blunders, but we want to be specific. What are those blunders? So why does that happen? Why does the American government allow that to happen? So why does it relax the rules and the laws to encourage businesses to make these kinds of loans, like banks making loans that people can't pay back? Why is that? Why would a government do that? So Ferdov says it's because of a free economy. Yeah, so why does this happen? Yeah, and the answer there, you're right, Ferdovs, is it's built on a capitalistic culture of free exchange or free economy, right? Yeah, definitely, right? That is the heart of the American way, that if you have got a business idea, I don't want to get in your way. Go for it. Make tons of money, right? I don't want to stop you. And here we get into a huge argument about, does it work? Does it not work? But we won't talk about that today because we need to focus on this passage, right? So The government is not controlling the movement of money, Mohammed. That's the reason. Okay, they're not controlling the economy. They're letting it free flow. All right, that's the problem. They're letting the banks do whatever they want. All right, so that's the passage. We've got a good idea. Now we can answer the questions. Let's do that together. So let's get into the questions. Let's answer them together. Here we go. Yes, no, not given. Yes, if the statement agrees with the claims of the writer. No, if the statement contradicts the claims of the writer. And not given if it is impossible to say what the writer thinks. Not what you think, but what the writer thinks. Okay, very careful with that one, the not given. All right, let's go for the first one. 27. Those that fall for common scams deserve to be compensated by society. Okay, a scam is a trick. Okay, so if somebody says, you just won the lottery, send me 2 Bitcoins and I will give you $1 million, that's a trick. Okay, so this is a trick. It's a scam. It's a bad trick. Compensated means to be given money back for damage. Okay, to be repaid in this case. Okay, so those that get tricked should be repaid by society. Is it important to know this information for this passage? So do I need to know this? Is it important for the causes of the American crisis? Is it important? So don't jump ahead, students. Step number 1 with true, false, not given, or yes, no, not given, is ask, is it important to know whether or not people who fall for simple tricks should be repaid by society? Ferdov says yes. Hung says yes. I agree, yes, it's important. Why is it important? Okay, think simple, think logical. It's important because it is connected to the responsibility of the individual. Okay, this question's connected with the responsibility of individuals. So yes, it's important. Okay, so yes, it's important. So it has to be a yes or a no. Okay, it's connected to individual responsibility. Now, I know that it's important, so I know it's a yes or a no. Now, is it true? So if people fall for a trick, like an email scam, they should be repaid. Is it true that they should be repaid? Is it, or do we believe, no, they shouldn't be repaid? If we believe they shouldn't be repaid, then clearly the answer for this question is no, right? So the answer there is no, so I put the letter N, or I write no into my answer sheet for space number 27. Now, if I'm not sure, right, I'm having difficulty, where should I look for that answer? So if I have to search for it, because I read the introduction carefully, I read the thesis carefully, then if I have to look for it, where would I find this? Okay, Surya and Tina both say it'll be paragraph 2, because remember, it's introduction, responsibility of individuals, banks, and the government. Those are the paragraphs. That's the structure. So if I have to search, then I can go back to paragraph 2. If a person falls prey to an email scam, the blame is deservedly placed on the hapless person. Society feels pity for them, but nobody feels the government should reimburse the individual for their lack of caution. Okay, there is your answer. The word reimburse is paraphrased with the word compensate. Students, if you're just searching for a keyword, it will be very, very difficult to locate this answer. The word scam, maybe, but you still have to read this and understand it. Okay? Anyhow, we definitely now know that the correct answer is no. Does that make sense? Is that clear? Okay, so first we always want to figure out whether the statement is important or not for the passage. Then we know if it's given or not given. And then if it's given, we want to figure out if it's true or not. Then if we don't know, as long as we paid attention in the introduction to the thesis, we know where to find it. Okay, Firdavs, thank you for that. Surya, same thing, thank you. All right. So we know that this is a no, and we move on. Okay. Many home buyers are too young and irresponsible. For this passage, is it important to know the age and level of responsibility of each person? Is that important to know the age of a home buyer in the United States? No, it's not important to know, right? This is a silly detail and it doesn't make sense. So here, I just say not given and move on. I don't need to search the text, right? Farouk Azim says, not at all. That's not important for this. That's ridiculous. So it's not given. I'm not going to search, okay? Number 29, society trusts the banking system. Is it important to know for number 29? Is it important to know whether or not society trusts the banking system for an economic crisis? Absolutely. Look at all of you say, yes, that's important. Yeah, definitely. It's important. Is it true? Does society trust the banking system? So is it true? Does society actually trust the banking system? Do people trust this bank? So and keep it simple here. Do you keep money in the bank? If you do, then you trust the banking system. Even if you say you don't, if you keep money in the bank, you trust the banking system. And I bet that most of us do keep some money in the bank. So, and of course, these days, maybe not as much. It's changing. But at the time of the crisis, still, definitely yes. And I think still today, most people do trust the banking system. So the answer is yes, and we move on. Okay? Russell says it goes without saying. Now, be careful, students, when it's a yes, no, not given, make sure you're using N, N, G, Y for yes. Don't use true, false. You will get it wrong, okay? If you write a T, Pachu, you'll get that wrong, all right? Number 30, home buyers have an ethical obligation to beware of trustworthy institutions. Is it important to know the responsibility of home buyers and banks or institutions that we think we should trust? Is that important for this topic? Sujan Kandel, Priti, Ponnakanti, all say yes. Haung, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's definitely important. So yes, it's important. So it has to be given. Okay, it's given. Is it true, according to this author, so according to this writer, should people be responsible to be careful when they go to a bank and say, hey, give me $100,000 so I can buy a house? Do I have a responsibility to be careful when I'm borrowing that much money for a home? Yes, absolutely. Absolutely I do. So the answer again is yes, according to the author. So no, not given, yes, and yes. That's how it works, ladies and gents. That is the magic to solving yes, no, not given, true, false, not given questions quickly, confidently. So you're not kind of like, I think it's the right answer, but you're like, no, yeah, it's definitely the right answer. Okay? So with confidence. Does that make sense? So is it clear what I just explained to you? Does that make sense of the logic that you can use for yes, no, not given, true, false, not given once you read the passage? Of course, after you read the passage. Now, some of you might be thinking, yeah, Adrian, but do I have enough time? Is 20 minutes enough time? Absolutely. If you practice, okay, if you practice, you have to practice reading and you have to practice this strategy, and then you will have loads of time to do this, okay? Even if you have to search for a couple of the answers, okay? Asha, you are very, very welcome. I'm glad that helped you out, okay? Again, students, for lots of strategies like this one, check us out at aehelp.com. Our course, our videos, our interactive course for your phone, tablet, PC, it's full of these kinds of real learning strategies using critical thinking. So aehelp.com for academic version of the exam, and GIELTS help.com for the general. Okay, definitely check us out there. Spend a couple dollars so you can save yourself a lot of headache and time. Our strategies, by the way, students, a lot of them are quite unique. We use a lot of psychology for developing our strategies in our tests, so keep that in mind. Okay, let's keep going to the next set of questions here. So this is the sentence completion, where we need to complete these sentences. And here, it's the same kind of strategy as with other multiple choice. So this is kind of a multiple choice type of question, where you basically have half of a sentence, and then you have a choice of 6, and you have to choose. So this is your multiple choice. Now, for multiple choice, the best strategy is always answer on your own first. So don't search for the answers in the answers, but answer on your own, okay? All right, here we go. Banks have a responsibility to. So according to our reading, what do banks have a responsibility to? What do banks, in your own words, what do banks have a responsibility to? How would you finish that sentence? Imagine that you don't have these choices. You actually just have to finish the sentence with a line. Then what would you say? What would you write? So Ferdov says banks have a responsibility to give loans. Yeah. For Dobbs, I would take it one step further, to give loans to qualified buyers, right? To give loans to people that can pay it back. Or I would say banks have a responsibility to lend money carefully, or lend money with rules. Surya says to save our money, right? Okay. Banks have a responsibility to each other, right? To other banks, to government. Okay, so those are the ideas that come to mind. Farouk says loans to suitable buyers. Sure. Okay, so let's see what matches. Pay attention to grammar. So the grammar has to match. It has to be correct grammar. Okay, so A, the breathing room for failure is so low that lending has to stop. That doesn't make sense. Reassure the people that it is okay to borrow money, maybe. Instructing their employees to lend to ill-qualified buyers, definitely not. It's the opposite of what we just said. Responsibility to their small part of the big economic picture. It sounds interesting, but it doesn't make a lot of sense grammatically. Okay, so D sounds like the idea is okay, but the grammar is wrong. To their small part, no. E, protect the industry they are a part of. So banks have a responsibility to protect the industry they are a part of. Banks have a responsibility to banks have to receive a bailout. That doesn't make sense. So what do you think is the best answer based on what we thought and based on grammar? A lot of you are saying B, but I would disagree. Ferdov says it's E. Ayash says it's B or E. Yeah, banks have, think about which one's more important. Okay, so some of you are saying, oh, it's maybe B, and some of you are saying, oh, it's maybe B or E. Which is more important? Okay, if you're not sure, if there's two answers in your head here, then ask yourself, which is more important? Is it more important for banks to tell people it's okay to borrow money? It's kind of strange, actually, if you think about that. Or is it more important for banks to protect the industry that they're a part of, to keep the industry of banking alive? Yeah, so Sujang Kandel says, I think obviously E's got to be more important than telling customers to it's okay to borrow cash. I agree. Protecting the industry. Otherwise, there is no bank, right? So again, logic, students, logic is your friend. Don't panic. You are the tortoise. You are the turtle. You're not the rabbit, okay? You're a brilliant thinking supercomputer, okay? Use your processing power in your brain. So 31 is E. All right, next question. Each bank is responsible for. Let's finish that one on our own. Each bank is responsible for what? Each bank, that means every one bank is responsible for. Shilpa says maybe B. I'd be careful, Shilpa. Tina says for other banks. Yeah, Tina, that's a good way to finish that sentence. So each bank is responsible for the other banks. For what else? For borrowing money. I would even keep it more simple than that and finish this sentence for the economy. Okay? Each bank is responsible for the economy, right? Every bank has a small piece of the whole economic pie of that money, right? So which one is the closest match? If I look at these choices, which one do you think matches closest to their part of the economy? Yeah, so all of you are saying, well, it's got to be D. Each bank is responsible for their small part of the big economic picture. I agree. Yeah, that makes sense. So D it is. Okay, so first one was E, second one was D. A recession is started when? Okay, here we have to figure out when a recession is started. Recession means that you cannot borrow money anymore. The value of money goes down. When does that happen? When does a recession start? So when does it become difficult to borrow money and the value of money goes down? When does that happen? Finish it on your own. Okay. Well, when people don't pay loans, when companies don't pay loans, when banks don't pay loans, when people don't give money back to each other, a recession starts, right? So the answer that a lot of you are giving me is A. The breathing room for failure is so low that lending has to stop. Now, if you have to search for that, you could look for the word recession. It's at the government level, and you will find that A is the correct answer. All right, students, you're doing an awesome job, and I can tell that a lot of you are starting to synchronize with the strategies and the information that I'm giving you. Now, obviously, you're clear that that's happening because you're practicing. So you're in the class, you're learning the right strategy, and you're practicing. So, of course, your logic is improving, and your ability to understand and to give the right answers is improving. Here's the final question. Set the American government's role, clearly coming from the last paragraph, right? Because we're talking about the American government. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 more questions there. I think we have just a number mismatch. This would be 40, so don't worry about the numbers there. Just worry about the spaces. And here are the possible choices for these spaces. Now, I don't have enough time to go through this one with you. I'll challenge you to do this last question set on your own at home. The video is available on our channel in 1 hour, so you can move to the end of the video at 54 minutes and see this question with the choices. Then you can send your answers to my email, and I will give you the answer key so you can figure out how well you did. Here is my email, Adrian@aehelp.com. Okay, so send me your answers to my email and I'll give you the answer key so you know how you did. Again, students, if you enjoyed this class, help us help you. Invest a few dollars into learning the right techniques for the exam. Check us out at aehelp.com for academic IELTS and gieltshelp.com for the general. Those websites look like this. This is the general with the green background. This is the academic with the blue background. Click on that red button. Do yourself a favor. Learn the right ways to study and get those high band scores. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for your participation. I wish you the best for the rest of your day. If it's late in your country, then I wish you sweet dreams, good rest, and a great start to tomorrow. Much love to all of you. Bye for now.